Welcome to another Figure Week, Hard Surface Week, Organic Week.
Hey everyone, my name is Ahmed Al-Douri. I'm a concept artist and former instructor at Art Center College of Design, Brainstorm, CCS, CGMA, and various other places. And I would like to introduce to you this digital painting course that I've created. But before we get into anything, I just want to thank you for the support you've all given me this whole time. And with the support of so many of you, I've been able to put together everything I know about painting into this digital painting course. You want to become a pro illustrator, concept artist, or even just a hobbyist, but you don't have a clear map to get there. And that's where I come in. I spent the last 6 months compiling everything I know from my 20 years of art practice, and I've turned it all into a map. Starting with foundations such as rendering shapes, color theory, painting basic subjects, understanding brushwork, brush economy, all that fun stuff, deconstructing the skull, drawing it from every angle, all the way to master studies, stylized painting, and you'll find yourself at the end of the course doing a concept art project based on everything that we learn in the first 14 lessons. So how does it work? Well, you sign up, you watch the lectures, do the assignments, post them to the community page if you want, and treat it as a self-study, except for those of you who have signed up for the weekly meeting, where I personally critique your work in a virtual classroom setting. I believe learning by repetition is super important. That's what I've sort of presented a lot in this course, and the assignments are tailored for that, as adapted from my time teaching at Art Center. And each of these lessons have step-by-step explanations in real time. If you've ever seen my videos, you know exactly how I teach. And this course is intended to be a substitute for a college level course, but you don't have to pay the $4,000 or $5,000 per class, racking up maybe $200K in debt. With my custom design course, you'd be paying a fraction of that. And of course, I also have payment plan options if you don't want to pay for the whole thing at once. Thank you for watching this, and I'll see you soon.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Digital Artcast. Another episode coming at you thick and fast off the back of our last one with Lauren Lanning. It's been a little bit of a gap between episodes. Generally just things going on in the world and in my schedule has meant that I haven't had as much time as I wanted to this month. So I'm always looking to get an episode out at least once a month. I've tried to do that consistently for a long time, and just again trying to get people's schedules aligned has always been difficult because the world is the way it is, and people are obviously busy with loads of projects and the work and time and everything else in between. But again, we have put together another great guest for today, someone that I've looked to speak to on the podcast for quite a while. Again, try to align schedules is always difficult, but we've got there in the end. Today let me introduce our guest, Mr. Erik Nilsson. Hey, Erik.
Thank you. Hey man.
Yeah, hey.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, good to have you here, man. It's been a long time coming. It feels like it's one of these things where I think we started talking really early on through our kind of common friend, Johan.
Yeah, that was ages ago.
3 years ago or something like that. Yeah,
probably
crazy.
More than that, really.
Erik was someone who just jumped into a painting night one night. We were just kind of doing a study And Johan was like, "Oh, here's my buddy Erik. Like, we're going to do some painting." I was like, "Oh, cool. Like, yeah, we'll hang out and chat." And now you're a big fancy art director at a major game studio.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's been a really wild ride the last few years.
But you've earned it, man. Congratulations on our success so far, and yeah, congratulations on the game. It's been a huge success also. So yeah,
thanks. Yeah, it's gonna be really fun to see where how high we can take it. Kinda.
Yeah, of course. So for people who don't know you, can you give a little brief introduction of who you are and what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Erik. I studied game like way back. Like I started studying like game development and art and stuff when I was like 15, 16 or something. And then I went to the game assembly. There's a big game school in Malmö in Sweden where we do it's like pretty intense education. You do like 2 years full on projects, like not really a lot of theoretical work, more like practical work.
Yeah.
It's a really really good school. And then after that, I did my internship at Massive.
Nice.
So I did some worked on some concept art for The Division way back. Yeah, it was kind of a funny story because I actually got my internship at another studio that I really wanted to do my internship at called Southend at the time.
Right.
They've done a lot of smaller mid-tier games, but they have like a fun anyone that knows me knows that I love creature design and more fantastical stuff and things like that, and they had like a good mix of all that stuff, so I was really excited. I think like a week or two after I got the internship there, I hadn't really heard anything, and then the guy called me up and said, "Yeah, so the studio's no more." Yeah. Do you want to? Yeah, I was like, yeah, but we're all getting bought up by Massive. Do you want to tag along? I was like, yeah, sure.
Oh yeah,
let's do that instead. Yeah.
I mean, Massive in terms of Sweden is one of the biggest studios that really exists there. I mean, there's obviously there's a good few studios, but Massive is a massive studio. It's funny how the name has really matched their scale because the vision is such a huge thing now. So
yeah, for sure. No, but it was a crazy thing. It was a great team to be a part of.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, even with when Johan, when I first met him, I think he was still at DICE, doing some stuff there as well. And they're in Sweden as well, and worked on Battlefront. Was one of his first gigs before he went elsewhere. But yeah, it seems a lot of people who came out of that school really went to really cool projects.
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of good schools in Sweden. I think a big reason for it is that we have a lot of funding for arts. The different art schools. So there's a lot of like big bands, like metal bands. Like you've probably heard of a few, like Ghost or In Flames.
Oh, cool! Yeah, I'm a big In Flames fan. Yeah, I met them a couple of times.
Yeah. But also, game developments, loads of good game developments, and one of the best ones I would say is the game assembly because it's very practical. So,
was that the one that Johan also went to as well, or?
No, I don't think he actually went to that. I think he went to I don't know if it was kind of SOF maybe, which is it was like kind of the game assembly prototype, you could say.
Yeah, I think it was definitely one of them. I can remember way back in the day they talk about going to something similar after he'd done his formal education, but it seems to be a thing that's needed because the skill gap is so huge when you leave traditional school that you kind of need these qualified courses because unless you want to push that really yourself, it's hard to find those mentors or those skills or those opportunities to push your skill set forward. And
I think I think one of the most important things is that there's a lot of schools out there that like what you really need is you need mentorship and you need like the time to actually sit and practice your skill set. And then what you need as well is like a good portfolio and like how to make a portfolio. And after that, you need to actually get an internship somewhere or like a job, preferably. But
super simple, yeah.
So a couple of steps. One day. But I think
Yeah, on
What's
you
so
go.
good? I mean, like, what's so good about that school is the fact that they basically have 2 years. There's no theoretical work, no like necessarily like homework, so to speak.
Exams and stuff, right?
Yeah, you work your ass off for 2 years. You do 8 game projects with a team, so you actually like get to learn how to work in teams, how to
Of
figure things
course.
out. People script their own game engines. Like there's so much you do. You do full on shooters or 3D and 2D and everything. And then at the end of it, you basically have a pretty cool portfolio. And then they do a meet and greet where they invite a bunch of people over from the game industry. And you get together and meet them. And there's like 30, 40 companies that come and try and snatch every one of these students.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, I mean, then you get an internship. And so that's probably the best thing about school is the connection they have to the industry.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the same with even big places. Like if you go on the extreme end, like Nomon, one of their placement rate percentages is something like 95%, but that's because within LA, obviously, you have access to some of the biggest studios in the world, and the guys who teach there typically are already working as well in a studio. So,
Yeah.
if they get a particular student they say has some potential, then they'll just like fire them into the studio that they're working at. It's one of these things where, um, you know, these opportunities didn't come along often, but if you find yourself in the right school at the right time, then you're almost kind of thrust into that. So
Yeah. Yeah. But essentially, I think like after, so I was a concept artist back then, and I've always been a bit of a 3D generalist. Like I love doing rigging and animation, and like just learning different things. And
dude, same.
yeah, exactly. I mean, and I honestly think it's been one of my biggest strengths is like I know a lot of people specialize, especially if you want to work on a AAA studio, because
Right.
yeah, then obviously like they need a guy to do characters. You don't
Yeah.
need to also do buildings, but I think like a big reason why I've managed to get somewhere, I guess, is because I've been had that interest for different skill sets and different departments, and that obviously means that you can like you learn what other people are doing, and you can work really well with a team that does different things. So I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
there
been
was
fun,
that.
I guess.
I'm trying to remember the name of the. Oh yeah, Range. There's a really good book by, I think it's David Epstein. Yeah, called Range, and one of my buddies, Derek Westlake, turned me on it, and he was talking about it's a book basically how journalists will win out in a specialized world. And he talks about how there's so many people out there who will specialize in one particular thing, but they then fall victim to anything outside of their realm of understanding. They become exponentially weaker because they can't really um, duck and weave to whatever the situation that changes. Because if they had to do something where their skill set had to be changed, like we need somebody to quickly do something else, they're almost just useless. Yeah, because they can only do one thing and one thing good. So,
Yeah,
and obviously people who specialize can obviously sometimes they might have an idea of maybe like, oh, maybe could do something like that or change slightly. But if it's too much diverse from what they're doing right now, then yeah, they kind of flounder because it's something they haven't prepared for. So yeah,
yeah,
it's one of these decisions I think you have to make early on about what kind of developer you want to be. Do you want to go all in one skill, or do you want to have a wide gambit of stuff?
yeah. I mean, it's not like you have to either. Like you can also be, oh, I love doing characters, and that's going to be my main thing. But then I'm also interested in doing something else, and
Mhm.
I'll keep an eye on it. And I like you don't have to be a master on every skill either. Like
Of
I
course.
think that's like an important thing to note is that I
Mhm.
don't have to be an elite. Uh, like I do bouldering and climbing and stuff. I don't have to be the
The
best
best,
climber in the world, right?
of course, to enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I enjoy it, and I learned a lot from it, and I mean, why not? It's the same thing. If you
Hmm.
learn a little bit of, I don't know, design, then you can talk to the concept artist more easily. Or,
Yeah.
but in any case, I from there on, I worked at Paradox for a bit as a concept artist.
Cool.
I worked on the Stellaris game, did a lot of spaceships and stuff, which was fun. And then after that, I got actually a friend of mine, Sarah, Sarah Kassan, that I've known for a long time. She called me up and she was like, "Hey, me and my friend Johan, we're gonna start a studio." Do you know anyone that would want to tag along as an art person? And I was like, oh, I want to tag along as an art person. And then I just joined
Me.
that train. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but I always wanted to do like an indie thing. So
Right. And was that the Lake Ridden thing you done?
yeah, so that was like a small like mist like puzzle game we did over the course of like 3 years or something.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, it looks like online. I mean, I only researched it really quickly, but it did look like, for the small amount of time that you were on it, or or the thing that you'd say, even that it was a bit, a smaller game, it did look like, no, maybe no AAA quality, but it did look like it was like there was a lot of effort put in it. That it was a big project as well. So
Yeah, I think it was also like it's one of those projects we would probably do a bit differently if we did it now. But with the skill set and stuff we learned, but it's definitely like a really fun project and like a good learning experience. And I'm considering we're like 5 people. It was two
oh yeah, well
people.
then you go. It's
Yeah,
for 5 people. Like that looks really good. Yeah.
yeah, like with 2 people doing all the writing, the puzzle, the game design, and the coding, and then
Wow.
me and another guy, Anton, we did all the art, like every
Jesus
single
Christ.
piece. It was a lot of work, especially since it was 3D and like
Yeah.
yeah. So that was
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, like, extremely well done. I mean, like, I mean, I know people always say they're quite impressed the fact that the 2 game jams I done, there was only 3 people. There was me, an artist, and 2 coders. And we had 4 days, and we tend to do like it was really cool stuff. I mean, that definitely opened my eyes to a different side of the world because of game jams. It definitely does give you experience that you're not used to, because I think until you finally make something and put it out in the world, you can't really understand the whole development process of making something.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, like it's for 5 people, that's very impressive.
yeah. It was fun for sure.
Definitely. And then of course the big one, which is Shark Mob.
Yeah, yeah.
We are
So,
now.
so we ran our little indie company for a while, and we still have it, but it wasn't enough to be able to survive on. Essentially,
Of course.
it's I think we kind of joined, or we decided to make a game when it was the whole kind of Firewatch, and like there was all those early indie games
Right.
that were doing really well, and then you had green light and stuff, and suddenly the floodgates were open, kind of on Steam, and yeah, and it was pretty hard to like survive on small single player story driven indie games.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so actually I knew a few people from Sharkmob before. I knew Rodrigo, the studio art director, a bit.
Okay.
He was one of the like the people who founded Sharkmob are the core team behind the division originally.
Ah, okay.
Uh,
Right.
and they so I knew him a bit from before, and it seemed like a cool studio. I wanted to check out what they did, and I got invited up. I think it was me, Sarah, and Joan. We got invited up to their studio back when they were like 10 people in like a small apartment, and he showed me the video, and it was Vampire Masquerade, and
Oh,
to me it was like I love Vampire Masquerade. I play the Bloodlines like so much.
same.
Yeah, so I was like, I was just at that point, we weren't sure. Like looking back at it, clearly he was like being, come work for us, kind of. But at that point, we were still doing like written and stuff. But it was
Yeah.
just really really cool to see that someone was finally making something with that IP, because at this point, the like Bloodlines 2 and all of that stuff that wasn't announced. There was no like I didn't know anything about that.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
this is the first VTM game, like video game, that I seen someone trying to make for the last 15 years or whatever, and I was just super happy that someone was finally doing it.
Yeah. Vampires kind of had a bad rap for a while because of the whole Twilight thing, and like there wasn't really any good vampire IPs coming out, and I think people thought it was kind of a passe thing. Like I mean, the biggest influences I would say vampire wise for me the last couple of decades has been the Underworld movies, which
Mm.
were extremely well written. Well, I mean, the first maybe 2, but I was actually also a very big fan of the Legacy of Kain series, which was
Legacy of Kain is one of my all-time favorites.
oh, dude,
Yeah, like Soul Reaver is just a masterpiece in my opinion. Like,
I would love to meet Amy Hennig one day. I mean, I know she spent so many years writing Uncharted, but her first Crystal Dynamics work in
yeah,
Legacy of Kain was just incredible, and
yeah,
Soul Reaver and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, like that whole story for a long, long time really inspired me. The way that the time travel stuff worked and back and forth, and the characters in it, and Raziel, and yeah, it's informed a lot of stuff I've done so far. But yeah, like I was one of the big components. Like when I first got on Twitch, I think back in 2014, maybe earlier. At the time, Nosgoth was kind of in its infancy, and I was heavily involved in the betas and the open access stuff, and trying to really nail that stuff down. And I was really gutted when that kind of died, and just
yeah.
never came back. It was
I
quite,
think
sad.
it was probably a little ahead of its time, actually. Like if you
Yep,
consider where the industry was heading.
of course.
Uh,
Yeah, definitely. Just the wrong time, the wrong place for that studio.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, but so obviously when I found out what you guys were doing, I was like, oh wow, this could be a whole
a whole new
thing.
chapter.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
whole new chapter of the vampire, PvP stuff, and um, but an interesting take you guys, kind of went with the whole um superpowered kind of aspect, and the fact that it's not a kind of, it is PvP in a sense, but it's but obviously in Nosgoth it was 5v5, it was humans versus vampires, but in this thing it's vampire v vampire, but it's obviously you've got it specifically between the clans. That's the whole thing now of you know um how you've kind of angled it, and obviously the not just the clans but the archetypes as well, that the whole thing that works with as well. I mean, it's super interesting. Like, there's you could probably do a whole podcast in just the game, like, because there's such depth there, right? There's just so much within it. Because when you say like the 1v100, people kind of say, oh, it's been done to death and stuff. But I think the twist you guys have taken on it is what makes it really super unique, right?
Yeah, I think like the best thing about our game is the verticality and the movement system. That's what really sets it apart, I think, and obviously the vampire abilities and stuff. But the funny thing about our game, like Bloodhunt, is that when we started development on it, and I came in like a year, maybe 1.5 into the actual production, I think. So we were around 34 people when I joined.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was like a tiny. We had like essentially one room with a
Mhm.
few meeting rooms, and everyone was just cluttered together. It was great. I love that part of
Yeah,
game
yeah, yeah.
development. Um, and I think one of the coolest things about that thing is that so Apex wasn't out yet.
Right.
There was no basically. I think during our early days, Fortnite turned from from the original game that it was
From a survival thing. Yeah.
to actual the battle royale game. So it's kind of funny when you think about game development because it takes so much time, and all you can do is sort of say, we think this is going to be good in a few years,
Right. Yeah.
and this is a good idea. Let's go for it. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
by the time you release it, because it
Mhm.
takes so many years, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, there was a bunch of other games that thought the same, and now
Yeah.
we have
Yeah.
to compete with them.
Oh, of
But
course. Yeah. But then, of course, they open the space and the doors for that audience to come in, because then again,
absolutely,
as soon as people look at it, they think, "Oh, I know this type of game. I've played this before. I've played Fortnite. I've played Apex. I've played whatever." Um, and yeah, like it does. It helps, but then again, at the same time, like you say, those people are then your direct competition. So then you're trying to fight for those player bases, because you're wanting them to come play your game. And I think it's one of these things where you guys were on to definitely a winning streak, but then it's also where these things we like, vampires are super niche in a sense where, you're not get everybody, your common Call of Duty player would maybe be into playing as a vampire. Like they'll be like, oh, vampires, what's going on? But it's trying to get a mass appeal to a very niche subject. I mean, even in any medium, vampires is definitely a niche. But same with werewolves, same with mermaids, same with anything really that's of that fiction. But you guys seem to be doing well. I mean, every time I see it, your player base seems to be getting larger and larger. So
yeah, I mean,
yeah,
it's we just have to keep going, kind of. But I think what's kind of interesting about it is that early on, when they were originally looking at the concept, and should we do this or should we not do
yeah,
this?
yeah.
I think one thing they looked at is that there is a few of these tropes that keep kind of coming back into the general public, that are these kind of strong
Of course.
stories or strong fantasies.
Mhm.
And one of them is vampires. One of them is like post-apocalyptic Mad Max.
Of course.
One of them
Yeah.
is pirates. There,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of these fantasies that
Just
and
keep coming around.
they
Yeah.
do cycles. They never really go away.
Yeah.
And I think vampires is one of those. If you look at the massive amount of stuff that's been coming out the last few
Yeah.
years, and obviously you got the big ones like Blade and
Oh,
Underworld,
yeah.
but you also got Lost Boys and like a bunch of like smaller kind of or like less known to the general
Yeah, of
public.
course.
But so I think it's definitely like one more nichey thing, but
Mhm.
it's not that niche at the same time,
Yeah, of
and
course.
you
There is an
can
audience for it. Yeah. I mean, well,
yeah.
Twilight in its sense was a vampire film, but like, yeah, the audience for that was, there was millions of people that watched those films. I mean, there were
Yeah.
huge audiences. And but one of my first experiences watching vampire films when I was really young was probably at an age I shouldn't have watched it, was Interview with a Vampire
Oh
with
yeah,
Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. So yeah, like a lot of people I think have romanticized vampires since Bram Stoker's stuff way back in the day. And even Castlevania recently, with
yeah.
Powerhouse remaking that series, like it was fucking incredible, dude. Like it was such a good animation.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a lot of vampire stuff coming out right now. There's obviously all the VTM games and
yep,
Bloodhunt, and then there's
yeah,
I think like another Swedish developer who made like a vampire, like a small kind
yeah,
of.
yeah. They were just in the news. They were in the news recently for not great reasons, but yeah,
Oh, okay,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, there was a whole thing came out basically about how the game had been super successful, but they basically weren't paying people who were working for them.
oh yeah,
So yeah, I think it's a French studio, I think, that made that one. But yeah, there is a ton of stuff coming out, and it's and then obviously the Masquerade, like there's Bloodlines 2 is still due to be coming out at one point as well. So that will be a whole thing. Hopefully, that might then reinvigorate your audience again, because the licenses are tied within the same universe. So it hopefully would give you guys another boost in player base, and obviously media cycle as well, for stuff that's related to that. So yeah, I mean it's a whole thing that I think, like you said, the verticality is one of the things you need to get right as well, and the art direction is crazy good as well. Like I think it's one of these things where it was difficult, right? Because like you said, the Masquerade game, the original one that we all kind of played back in the day, at this point was like early 2000s when it came out, and
yeah.
art direction, especially even just games, have just evolved so much, right? Like bringing that IP into the 21st century must have been a whole team effort. Of course, it was. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it was very interesting. Like one of the key things we wanted to look at when we looked at the original art direction was obviously it's a 90s game, and we wanted to do a little bit more of a like a modern take on it with a little bit of an HBO like style almost.
yeah, yeah,
Like the sort of we have this thing we call the blood flow, which is it's one of the trailers is like entirely made in blood flow, or the intro video. It's on YouTube,
right.
and it's almost like one of those kind of HBO intros
Oh
where
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like you're in a microcosmos of blood sort of. And
yeah,
there was a lot of cool ideas and cool stuff we did. But the funny thing about the 90s and fashion and stuff is that ultimately it's coming back. Like
yeah. Of course,
right
yeah,
right now we're in like an early 2000s trend era
right.
again. Yeah, it's kind of interesting how that kind of keeps going.
Everything comes around in cycles. Yeah, I mean, like definitely, you look at the art world in general, and it's just kind of taking ideas from originally where they were, and then recycling them, and then putting out, trying to make something new of what was and what could be. And I think with vampires, it's definitely generally harder as well, because not every vampire is the same. Like you said, when you start to introduce like the clans, especially, like they all have their own look. Like the Bruja and stuff, and Nosferatu, like they all have their own particular style and drape, and yeah, like it's one of these things where you're designing just a myriad of characters on different styles and different class levels and stuff like that. It's a lot of work, especially when your game is so heavily character based, right? It's kind of like Overwatch or Apex, like you said, when you have champions. Like it's the same kind of thing where every one has to feel unique, right? Every single one has to feel like they can exist on their own and in their own person. I mean, it's something maybe you guys have done in a sense where you've not done the kind of champion thing where like every vampire is its own character, right? They have like a backstory, a whole thing going on. It's more just like the clans are more the focus than actually the individuals, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think one of the interesting things partly is that VTM is what's cool about the clans is that there's essentially a vampire for everyone, right? There's you want to play the big kind of tough warriors, but like with the nobility and bravery, and like then you got the Bruja. If you want to play a blood sorcerer, you got Tremere. If you want to
Yeah,
play, and so on, like pretty vampire, you got the Toreador.
yeah,
There's a bunch of these different archetypes and different clans, and that's really the strength of the IP, I think. But what's sort of cool about it is that when we started working on it, like like it was a lot of work, but it's like there are already so strongly defined styles and looks that it's more a matter of how do we interpret this, and obviously with respect to the source material and
of course.
stuff. And yeah, it was a lot of fun for sure, and
I
it's
can
gonna be a
imagine.
lot of fun as we add more and more clans to the game.
Yeah, it was one of these things where every time I met up with Johan at an event, I was I was saying, "How's the mysterious IP project that you can never talk about going?" He was like, "Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
it's fun, yeah." Because for the longest time you're saying to yourself, "What the fuck are you working on? It must be something
Yeah.
really good." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll be really just waiting." And when I
Yeah.
announced it on that Halloween last year, was it 2 years ago now? You announced it, or last year? I can't
It's like
remember now.
last year,
It
I
would have
think.
been,
Yeah,
yeah.
my brain is a blur at this point.
Yeah, I'm the
It's
same. The days are merging together, but yeah, like it totally caught me by surprise. I was like, holy shit. Like, I actually think there's a clip of me on Twitch reacting to it when you guys announced it. And I think was it the Game Awards or one of those things.
yeah, Game Awards, I'm pretty sure it
Yeah,
was.
yeah, yeah. And I was watching and then I was like, oh, Shark Mob, here we go. Right, cool, what's happening? And I saw the trailer. I was like, oh, holy shit, vampires. Yeah, totally unexpected. Because like you said that, the game hadn't existed and really, or like that IP hadn't existed for such a long time. I think it
Yeah.
did catch people by surprise that were like, well, there was two ways that I seen on YouTube. It was like people reacting to it like, "Oh my god, Vampire," because they were old enough to remember the original game. But then also people being like, "Vampire the Masquerade, what the fuck is this?" Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you've never
yeah.
heard of it before. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
also like kind of people being sort of, "What the fuck have you done with my favorite IP?" Which is also like a
yeah.
a fun thing because yeah, I mean I kind of get that, like I personally like I'm
Everyone expects a different game than you give them.
yeah, but it's also like it's the strong single player roots and stuff, and
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
what we're really trying to do is show that we love the IP as well and we
yeah.
respect it, and we just want to there's enough room in the IP for more than one kind of story to be told in a
Right,
way.
yeah.
And yeah, and if you look at the like most VTM games are going to be the classic sort of vampires in political
Mhm.
like societies, and there's like a way more slow paced and more manipulative kind of
Of course.
story going on. And this is just the sort of the all out war scenario that happens, but
Right.
it happens rarely.
Yeah, I
Kind of.
mean, like the whole, even people when they look at the name, they don't understand what the masquerade is, right? And it's
No.
something that people don't take into consideration about vampires in modern day society, about how they have to hide from humans, and
Yeah.
it's a whole thing. Like if you break the masquerade, you can die and stuff like that. But that is something that was key in gameplay as well. It wasn't just something you talked about. Like it was an actually occurring thing that happened within gameplay. If you broke it, you'll get like a red mark in your back. Like people will be after you. Like you can't break the masquerade. It's still a thing that's going on even during wartime. So it's like a whole thing you guys brought into that as well, which is great because then it's again, like you said, it's staying so close to the source material and
Yeah.
being faithful to what the game is or the story, the lore is really about. So yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, I really love this like IP. It's such a cool world, and it's essentially a basis for a lot of the game like movies that I love, like Underworld
yep,
and Blade. So being able to work on it is kind of like a dream come true.
dream
Like
going
when
true.
I was a kid, there was like when I first played World of Warcraft, I was like, MMOs are great.
Mhm.
If I could work on an MMO in my lifetime,
Yep.
that would be amazing. And I'm kind of working on that now. Like we're not quite an
Yeah.
MMO or anything. We're a VR game, but we're still like a live service
Mhm.
multiplayer game, and we
Mhm.
have the opportunity to be able to take this game and actually evolve it over multiple seasons. There's so much crazy shit.
I
You
know.
love
Well, I was just going to say that people talk about like the whole, how Masquerade is so rooted in single player, but the thing is as well that if you look at Apex even back in the day, and like we
Yeah.
just talked about Fortnite, right, when that first started, about what that looked like, and versus now with fucking Spider-Man and Naruto and everything, like but like if you look at those things as they evolved, they changed so dramatically. And even Apex initially, the champions weren't what they are now. Like the whole thing with the stories, and every time there's a new season, there's a new cinematic explaining stuff, and there's always room if the game does well and you evolve it to constantly change how you guys deliver the service and expand on that whole thing as well.
And honestly, I think like one of the most fun things is actually working on, like, I really like working on live service games. It's stressful and crazy, and like I think the thing that people don't consider is that you're not just working on the content that's coming out next week. You're essentially splitting yourself in three. Like, you're working
Mm.
on the game as it is right now, potential problems that arise, bugs, what's like making sure that the store is working and all those things, and
Mhm.
supporting the players as things are coming, developing patches, fixes, and all kinds of stuff. But then you're also working on what's coming next. You're working on the upcoming stuff, right? And then you're also working on what's coming next, and what's coming
Yeah,
next, essentially. Like, you have to keep working on multiple levels into the future, because you're gonna get there pretty fast. Like, game
yeah,
development takes time, and 4 months between whatever releases or something, as it usually is with live service games, or 4, 5, 6 months. I don't know. It depends on
of
what
course.
game, but all of those are like, all of that is essentially very little time to actually do
Turn something
anything.
around. Yeah,
I mean, if you know how long time it takes to, because it's not just, it's not the waterfall. Like, you don't develop games waterfall. You don't develop games by, and if you don't know what waterfall is, yeah, like you know obviously, but
yeah,
a waterfall is the idea that you plan something out to perfection, and you say, this is exactly the game we're gonna make, and
yeah,
and then you execute it, and it goes down like a waterfall. But
yeah,
that
yeah.
that doesn't happen in software
It's like
development.
a river rapids tour. That's what it's like.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a freaking, and there's twists and turns, and you
Yeah,
iterate a lot on things, and the only thing you can do is say, this is probably the best direction. This is our
Mhm.
guess, is that this is going to be good. And then you try that, and many times you say, yeah, that was almost correct. Sometimes it's not correct at all. Sometimes you fail catastrophically, and
Yeah,
you
of
have
course.
to, redo your assessment and your plan and scrap things and stuff. But yeah, it's a pretty wild ride, but I really like it, and
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think that's good with live
I mean, it
service.
happens. It happens so much within, even within game jams, and the turnaround for that's even shorter. But
Mm.
it's not even the waterfall effect. It's the thing where like you can go back up the waterfall. You could design a character really early on, and then you feel like, right, okay, this is the iteration, and you've designed it so many times that you're seeing double, and then it goes back down to production, who make even get to maybe get to the point of making the first model, and then they're sitting saying, it's not really working, something's missing, and then you have to go all the way back to sketching again. Like,
Yeah.
it's one of these things where you think to yourself, right, that's done, shipped off, and then you start working on something else, and something comes back to you that you've worked on months ago, and you're like, oh god, like, like try to get your brain back in that mode of like, oh, where was I when I made this guy? Like, what was I thinking about? And yeah,
Yeah.
that's also a a complication. Even when you design levels around things that you think will be fun, and then you play it, and you're like, oh, shit, man, this isn't fun. like, like, what do we do now? Fuck, we've only got a couple of weeks or something. Or yeah, um,
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's one of the most challenging part, is when you're just like, this has to be out, and tested in 2 weeks.
mhm.
How do we solve this issue? Because it's not just like, it's not just you make the thing and then you release it. No, like, you have to make it in like in good time, so that there's a buffer window, which is almost like half the production, for
Yep.
QA, quality assurance, to check for bugs.
You hope at
Because
least.
yeah, and yeah, exactly, and like, stability for the coders to actually make it stable enough to run properly. And I mean, the bugs that you see in games, that's the stuff that got through the wide net. I mean, most of the stuff is just destroyed before it reaches you. But if you don't
Yeah.
have that quality assurance time, then
I mean, there's sometimes even things you can just never plan for, like people just walking off your maps entirely. Like with some things that are, collisions and stuff are off, and you're just on the totally wrong side of the map, or they crash the game because of it, and you're just like, how the hell, like, where did that come from? Like, it's, I mean, definitely some of my earliest friends in the industry were the guys at CD Projekt, and the whole thing with Cyberpunk, and it's a shame because I know how hard they worked on the art direction. I know a lot of the guys like Marek and stuff who really killed themselves making that game look amazing. And, it was just the whole press release of that first cycle was just all the bugs. Like people they couldn't talk about anything else.
yeah,
And it's one of these things when you work in games, you could make the best art ever and it looks like the prettiest game in the world, but like if it plays like shit, like, you're fucked. There's nothing you can do, and first impressions are usually the only thing you'll ever get. You don't get really a good chance of it.
No,
I mean, there's definitely examples of games having a second wind, but it's rare, right?
yeah. Even games like what's that called? The space game a couple of years ago.
Oh
That is
yeah, oh
No
fuck,
Man's Sky. No Man's
yeah,
Sky.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's like that game. I was so stoked for that. I was so pumped for that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then like all the problems and everything,
Of
and
course, yeah,
yeah, I didn't feel like buying it after that. But
yeah. But look at it now, like wow.
yeah, it's really cool.
I mean,
I'm
it was
happy. I'm really happy for them to have them.
100%. Yeah, I mean, Hollow Games, I think have really turned that. I mean, but it was funny when Sean he did a talk about it recently. I mean, good on him. Like, hey, but he talked about how when they released that game, the press was so negative, and there was so much just darkness in the world over that. What had happened
Yeah,
that they basically just shut the doors and the windows and just were like, right, cool, let's get to work on the game, let's finish it, let's make it good, and then just like everybody turned their Twitter off, direct all the hate mail to me, I'll deal with it. Let's just finish making the game, let's get it done, and they done it. They basically just shut their doors and delivered on what they originally promised. It took them a while, obviously, but yeah, I
yeah,
mean, like, there's definitely so many people I think would have cut and run and
yeah.
never went back.
No, I
So
think it's awesome. I think they did an awesome job.
yeah, definitely. And it's one of these things, like you said, it's when it's a live game and you're not delivering a single player experience, you're not kind of like putting it out into the world and like, there you go, it's done, enjoy. You're constantly clipping things over and changing things and updating and tweaking, every tiny little bit of gameplay that you get feedback from the players, and we need to change this, and then that goes out, and then the patch you release might, fix one thing but break three other things. So you're like, oh shit, and it's live service games are a whole other thing.
They're a different beast, Like there's eventually when you've worked on a live service game long enough, most people are like, oh, what I wouldn't give to work on a single player game right now, like
You do a
multiplayer
single player game and then you're like, oh, I want to work on a live service game again.
yeah. I mean that's how it is.
Yeah.
But
then
I
it must
just I
yeah,
mean I really love the live service part. I like that you can work directly with the players. You can work your ass off to produce something cool. You put it out and you have a clear deadline. It's like this shit got to be out in like 4 months or something,
yeah.
or whatever. And then you work on that. You put it out, and you get to see what people think, and hope that they like it. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the thing, right? But you have that versus working 5 years in pre-production hell on a game
Yeah.
that might not come out, or like
Yeah.
it will be changed. Like every single game it gets changed at
Yeah.
least 5 times, almost completely, like in pre-production.
That's
Like
the more common tale in our industry. That's more what happens than the kind of fantasy you've lived where you've actually worked on something that's came out and it's been successful. It's
exactly.
very rare. So
Yeah.
but
I
then
mean,
again, yeah. I was
yeah,
going to say, like, for you being an art director as well, for maybe not the first time, but like it was your proper first big, like, major studio role as an art director. Like,
yeah.
was that intimidating for you? Like, I mean, considering you hadn't had like such a huge thing before, right? Like, not on that scale, right?
Definitely. I mean, if you're, I remember I talked to Rodrigo, our studio, or my boss, the studio art director. When I became art director, I think when I first became associate art director, and he was asking me how I was feeling about it, and I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I feel a bit, intimidated by it, and it definitely feels like I have a little bit of what's it called
Imposter
when
syndrome.
yeah, imposter
Yeah,
syndrome, yeah. And he said, if you didn't have imposter syndrome, I would be very worried.
of course.
That's
No,
what-
100%.
and
I agree. Yeah,
which,
yeah,
which I think is definitely how it should be. Like so yeah, it's definitely intimidating. It's there's a lot of things counting on
yeah. You
like
delivering. Yeah,
yeah, but like I mean, it's the whole team, right? It's not me. Like
of course.
I think, but there's definitely like a lot of responsibility. One thing that I think is great about the way we work and the way we want to work with our people is that our job as art directors are not to boss people around.
Of course.
We're there to make sure that, like, if you think of like a racing track,
Hmm.
like the team is the people driving the cars. We're the mechanics,
Of
we're
course.
we're
Yeah.
there to help them when they need help, to make sure that they have what they need in order to do their best out there. And that's how it should be, I think. Like we should be the ones we're the support role, you know.
Yes.
Um,
I
so
mean, you
so
look at
that's been really fun.
yeah, you look at most marketing and management courses that revolve around teams. It's like every management role is always to serve the people you're working for. You're working for them essentially. Is what is it's what people will always say. That's the thing that always comes down to it. Every single course I've ever seen, when people go into talking about managing people, it's that you're not bossing them about. You're working for them. You're making sure that they have everything they need to do their job and more.
Yeah.
Um,
Like my friend Sarah, the funny thing is both Sarah and Joanne, who I started the studio with, but back when we were doing our little indie studio,
right.
they're both on Shark Mob now as well. And Sarah's producer and Joanne is a lead gameplay programmer, I think, or lead programmer.
Yeah.
But what Sarah usually says is that a producer is a person that they're like the snow snowmobile, that's, or like what's it called, like when you're like the big kind of machine going and
Plow?
and
Snow plow, you mean? Like
yeah, snowplow, yeah, exactly, yeah, their producers are like the snowplow. They're essentially just
clearing the
clearing
way.
the road so that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
everyone can do their stuff, or that's how it should be, really.
Mhm.
And I think that's a good analogy for also for what I do, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, it's great in these kind of companies where I think if the culture is good enough, you feel that you can not only enter it with a positive attitude that you're going to be appreciated as an individual, but also you have an opportunity to move up and on and do different things and explore new disciplines. And I mean, like we were talking about, our common friend Johan, who we met through, and he has now went from UI to concept. Like
Yeah,
he made the jump, and which is great for him because I know that was something he was chasing for a long, long time. He was enjoying his role in 2D, like as a UI artist, which is crazy because you know those people are so in demand, like crazy. Like you just like
yeah.
told us, you cannot find them anywhere. But
I
concept
think
was,
that I mean that was essentially like the biggest reason why it did go faster. I think for him, because he was doing such a good job
of
essentially,
course,
and
yeah,
and
yeah,
we really needed him to help out with UI, because it's
makes sense.
it's so hard to get people, especially people that are technical and so on. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm really happy that he finally managed to, like, that we got enough people hired to handle the UI department so that he
Right,
could he could
move on.
make the
Yeah.
transition, because yeah, it's been a long time dream of his.
I mean, it's one of these things where, I mean, we talked about this off air before we started recording about how you were impressed about following my journey with the 3D and stuff, and thanks for that, by the way. That's always a great thing
Of
to hear.
course.
Um, but 2D is always at the back of my mind as well, and I think it's one of these things that a lot of people always have this dream of being concept artists and concept designers, and even just illustrators. And I'm always trying to ask my question, why is that important to me? But I think it's the idea that you can create worlds and stories from your imagination. I think you can do it in a sense with 3D, but I think being able to put pencil to paper and create that whole illusion yourself, I think is something that's rare. But when I was talking to Marek Maje the other day from CD Projekt, he was saying that he was talking to one of his students, and he said that the concept world now is almost as difficult as trying to get work as an actor.
Oh.
Would you feel that's fair?
I think to a certain degree, I think the main thing about concept art that is really confusing people is that a lot of people see these really great paintings, and they see these amazing work on
Promotional stuff, the
ArtStation.
marketing stuff.
Yeah, and that's kind of my point as well. A lot of times, it is the promotional work. It's things that have been polished up afterwards to sell the game, or in some cases, they hired basically a really really good freelance artist like Jamie Jones,
Oh
or
yeah,
whatever. Jamie is like my all-time
you're higher
favorite
than Jamie. Then
artist.
well done.
Yeah, yeah. Like if I could work with Jamie on anything, I would be happy. I
Oh
would die
god, yeah.
happy. But in any case, yeah,
If you're
he
hiring these guys to do your illustrations, then yeah, they're not going to be concepts in a sense that you're doing concept,
no,
right?
no, exactly. I mean, they can still do the work. Like
Of
they're
course.
still
Oh yeah.
designers.
More than
But
capable. Yeah.
they're not like the kind of work that you see. Those big paintings, they're there to set a mood, general feeling for the team to rally around. They're essentially like a vertical slice, or like concept movie. But I think what's cool about it is that, or like what people are confused about is that they see these amazing images and then they're like, that's what I gotta do.
Yeah. I
And
have to be that good. Yeah.
yeah, but also that they sort of they miss out on the whole idea that it's about design. That's why you're a concept artist. And a lot of people that I see in the industry, sadly, I don't think are necessarily designers, or they're not schooled as designers, at least.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's like, yeah, great that you can paint an awesome painting. I wanna, you always need one person that can do that, or you will need that. But
Of
a
course.
lot of times we take in freelancers to do that. Like the main thing that's important for us is that you can design things, because it's going to be like, hey, we need this new outfit, we need this new, we're making whatever, like this
A
prop
new
or this
weapon, a new
weapon,
suit,
or
costume. Yeah.
yeah, you need to figure out how this thing works, how
Mhm.
it's going to shoot. You need to talk to the game design team, you need to talk to the VFX artist, you need to do the research, you need to do the design, you need to do everything.
Does it
And
fit in the art direction? Does it fit in the world?
yeah,
Does it fit with the
yeah,
people? Like even when you concept design like a gun, like, what does the safety look like? What does the trigger look like? Why would it look like that? Well, because the guy's fired it 500 times and maybe it's custom fitted for his finger because he's so powerful that he needs a custom grip because, like, this is like the problem solving aspect that I think like you're talking about people miss with concept design. And that's why obviously now I think even people don't call them concept artists anymore. It is concept designers because you're designing and you're problem solving on a daily basis for your team.
yeah. Yeah, and that's the whole thing. You're supposed to make sure, as a concept designer, that like this like it's communicated to the player, that it's exciting for the player, that it's and that all the other teams have what they need in order to design things. So I mean, sometimes concept designing can simply be,
Mhm.
shit, we need a VFX.
Yeah.
Then that could be that you find references, you create mood boards, you do quick overpaints, you do red pens, and that's all the work you need to do, because your work is not going into the game. Your work is making sure that other people's work go into the game.
Yeah.
Uh,
I've even seen guys who are concept designers have had to turn their hand to storyboards really quick, just to get something out. You know what I mean? Like it just depends where you're needed. And I think with that concept design job, sometimes you just have to be almost a jack of all trades.
yeah, yeah. So I think it's one of those things where it's concept design is yeah, it's definitely like it's definitely hard,
Mhm.
but I think the main thing behind that, for me at least, is
Mhm.
that it's hard to find designers, people that are actually interested in designing things and are
Yeah.
trained to be designers, rather
Yeah.
than people that like painting. Because painting, there's plenty of people that like to do.
Of course. Yeah.
But
No,
I mean, yeah,
it's a very clear thing I think we talk about in the show often, and we have since day one, is that there's plenty of people who can draw pretty pictures, but then it's how is that functional? How is that helping the team? How is that cohesive in the vision that we're trying to create? And it's difficult. It really is something you have to um, build over a couple of years and maybe even decades of working and stuff. And the job has evolved so differently from when I first left my job in 2011, 2012. Like ArtStation wasn't even a thing. CG Hub was kind of where everybody went. There was a concept art world, but the job itself, concept artist, was still very new. And it wasn't like a decades old job. Because the games industry itself isn't that old when you think about it. Because compared to like the film industry, like we're still in the infancy of what will be our careers. 100 years from now, how our jobs look. So
yeah, and I mean it's gonna keep changing. Like I think that's another thing is that we haven't seen nothing yet. Like
of course,
it's I think being sort of a jack of all trades type of person is pretty useful when you're a concept artist because it's about communicating ideas fast, and if you can get your ideas out really quickly, that's really important.
yeah, we were talking about this the other day when we were talking about how close the productions on films are getting towards games now, because a lot of the guys I know who work on films now, there's some guys I know don't even draw or paint. They just make everything in 3D and take snapshots because it's so much quicker turnaround wise. For directors, like, we need 5 or 6 shots by the end of the day. Cool. Give me 2 seconds. I'll take some photos in Unreal, or Blender, whatever's to hand. And the tools have evolved so quickly. I mean, Jan Urschel and a couple of the guys that I know on that side of it. I mean, even you look at Yava Urbrev, like, Yama, sorry, Yama's whole production now is making 3D assets for people to use in film production, so
Yeah.
the whole discipline has changed so rapidly. It's almost a lost art now.
Yeah. But it's really fun. I love to see all the interesting ways people take their designs and all the interesting directions that they go in with their methods and stuff. But I think like for me it's always more interesting to look at. I can look at an image and I can be like, that's a pretty image. But if it has an interesting design as well, that's way
Yeah.
more interesting to me personally, because I enjoy to see when people have solved the problem. There's some TV shows where you see that they really succeeded, and you're like, oh, that's so clever. I love
Yeah.
The Expanse, for example, like the way
Oh,
they
yeah.
did the whole thing. So.
It's really been tearing things up. I mean, like, it's the whole thing with AI now as well, where people talk about, AI is coming to get our jobs. And I mean, even the one I've been playing with recently, which is Artbreeder, which makes, these huge landscapes with just a click of a button. And they do look incredible, but you still need to go in, like, even it's like 50% of the work, you still need to do the other 50% to tidy it up and make it look like something presentable or something that feels like, there's never going to be a sense where like those tools will go away. Even people who talked about, the 3D stuff, and we just talked about with Yama and stuff, and Jan using 3D for film production. It really is a time thing. And people say like, oh, drawing's going to go away or painting traditionally is going to go away. Those things will always give you an upper hand. Like if you can draw or paint to an extent and have fundamental foundation skills, those will never not be a positive, right? Those will always be things that can help you in a pinch.
I think also like just design work in general will never go away. Like, because like you said, you still have to make something out of it, even though you have it. But yeah, it's and like you say, it's like we're in this shift, or we're in a constant shift, really. Like with this industry, like there's always new things happening around the corner, and right now we're in a transition, maybe, where people are learning how to use these new tools and how to show restraint as well, or like what to keep from the old and what to keep from the new. And
I mean, these things will always be tools. They'll never be a replacement for fundamental skills or like you said, design language. Or
no, it's the same thing with the music industry, for example.
of course,
Like it's always been like, I remember I saw this interview of I think Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails, where he was talking about yeah, I mean it's way easier to make music these days technically, but there still hasn't been like,
if you don't have natural rhythm or something, like
yeah,
you're still going to struggle to make music.
yeah, exactly. It's still hard work, like still creative work that you have to put in, and AI can probably do it for you, but it will probably sound like a lot of other stuff that an AI has done, right? Like it'll, yeah.
I mean, there was a whole thing where like we were talking about the Artbreeder program that I've been using, and I was speaking to one of the guys who helped kind of make it at one point, and he was saying, yeah, it's a great program. If you're staring at a blank canvas, 100%, like it will help you, but one of the problems he finds with that stuff is that it'll get to a point where you'll see the same patterns in every painting, and people will start to really tell when you're using that as a crutch. And it's the same with 3D assets. With Megascans, for example, in Unreal, there's only so many things you can use within that library before people start to be like, cool, like half your scene is Megascans. Did you design anything yourself?
Yeah.
There's got to be that's why those fundamental skills are key, because they give you originality. Because you can import a model of like a Japanese shrine or something, but if you hand draw something yourself, then like that's where the uniqueness comes in. That's where the appeal, the thing that makes it look cool. It's you could copy and paste stuff in and out of scenes, but then you start to lose the whole aspect of what it is to be an artist, right?
Yeah, and I also think that there's a danger. Like, I remember when I started, I've never gone to proper art education. Yes, like I went to the game assembly, but half the work I did there was like, like that was like 3D work and like essentially learning to work in teams and stuff more than anything.
Yeah, of course.
And
Which is a huge skill as well.
yeah, and definitely 50% of working at studio is learning how to be in a team and how to communicate with people. Because if you can't do that, then you can't. But yeah, like I remember that for me, I was like working a lot with the struggle of that, being a digital artist without having the fundamentals of a traditional artist. Like, I've drawn, right? But you on paper and stuff, but I've never done, color theory properly or anything like that. And then you get confronted with all these now with this infinite world of choices.
Of course.
And you're just like, how the fuck do I go from what does this even mean? How does this work?
How do you Photoshop, bro?
Yeah, exactly. Just Photoshop it. But I think that's the whole thing about like today as well. That if you basically skip over, if you just go copy paste too much, then you're missing out on learning some of those fundamental skills that would really help you in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a kind of Maya modeling course recently where I was trying to just build on some of those foundations, and the guy I spoke to who runs the course, he was saying that it can take him like 30 hours to teach the course, but it can take you 3,000 hours to master those skills. Like just because you've sat and done a course by Craig Mullins or something, or watched him paint for a couple of hours, doesn't mean you're going to come out of that and know how to use those skills, especially in a real world setting. So
I think it's also one of those things that was interesting about brushes. If you the old like, oh, I want to get those Photoshop brushes because they're going to make me an awesome artist.
What brush are you using? The first question every time.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the point there as well is that you don't really like, you can take Princess brushes, but those are just customized tools for that person.
100%.
Yeah. That they have worked with for years, and if you don't know how to properly use those tools, then you might as well not use them, because they're going to be useless to you. Like, you're not going to get the same, you're probably going to get worse results than if you just use what you've already been using. But that's kind of, that's always interesting.
I mean, like, some of the best brushes I've seen are ones that really bring texture to paintings, I think, is the stuff that I find really interesting. Like, I think that's what I love about a lot of your landscape work, is like, it has such texture. That's really what appeals me towards what you're painting and what you're trying to design.
Thank you.
And I think that's one of the things that people miss out, is when they start using like the hard rounds and stuff. Like, it's like, it gets to a point everything just looks smudged, and it's like, they're blending stuff so much that you're like, oh, you're just losing every piece of detail that you're building. Like, you just keep going over and then just make it fuzzy again. Like, it's, people are so scared to commit to lines. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like working like one layer, honestly. I'm always like,
like traditionally painting, basically.
Yeah, and if I'm not working in one layer, like for example, now I'm currently working in 3 layers technically, because I have a layer and then a clipping mask and like a color, but I'm gonna merge that soon. Because it's like one of those things where I like to do it until I decide to merge it, and then I merge it, and then it's like, okay, now this is, I'm not gonna really go back anymore, because this is better than what I had before.
Of course.
But what's cool about it is that you learn that you can always paint it again. Like, and obviously some things you want to be a little smart about and save, but in most cases it's okay. Like, you can get away with a lot of stuff.
I mean, it's just a thing where I think people are too afraid of, making the mistake and then be like, oh, it's ruined now. Like I've done the one mark out of place that shouldn't be, and I need to go back and redesign the whole thing. It's like,
Yeah.
you can totally, you can brush over it. It's all good. Like nobody's going to die. Like you're all good. So, yeah, it's one of these things where it's even, I started embracing just drawing with pens more than pencils because, it does give you that whole, commit thing. Like you need to be able to commit when you're drawing with like an ink pen, like a biro or a brush pen because, you can't erase that stuff, but then it does give you a confidence to not be as tame when you're designing stuff, and your lines will be a bit more bolder and your silhouette's a bit more sharp.
I love brush pens, by the way. They're great.
Oh yeah. It was funny though when we went to meet Kim Jong Ji at THU, and they asked him about some of his most irritating questions, and one of them was every time was like, what was the brush pen he was using? Like every time, every single demo we went to, every course, people were like, what's the brush pen you're using? It's like, fucking shut up. Just had enough of it. Like he was like who cares? Like it's a brush pen. Like you can buy them anywhere. There's so many of them. Just like pick the one you want, and because it's a thing where, like you were talking about brushes, like it's the same with any utensil. People will look at that and say, oh, I need to get that brush pen, or I need to get that brush or pencil, or paint on that canvas, or use that type of sketchbook, or I need to get an iPad Pro because everybody uses Procreate now. Like I think so much of art, in any medium, especially when you look traditional paintings and painters, is that you need to find what works for you.
Yeah. I mean, 100%. Like I think the best thing you can do is just figure out sort of what your preferences are by just doing it, and then like you just borrow stuff. Like you see a video, with someone and they do something cool, and you're like, oh, I want to try that.
I'll do that. Yeah.
And then you pick that up and you go for that, and you don't use all of it. Like all of that isn't going to help you. Like you pick the things that make sense to you, and then you build your own repository of knowledge, your own like library, your own way of doing things, and that will be your thing. And I think like one of the earlier things I remember. Back when like concept art was still a thing, like conceptart.org and stuff, or com or whatever it was called, that people were like, oh, you need to have a style, right? It was the whole.
Oh god, yeah.
I still think to this day it's a thing where people are looking for their style, but your style is just how you paint, and if you just paint and just find your own way of painting, you will have a style eventually. Like that's just part of it. You can't not have a style, kind of.
Style just comes from just never stopping. Like you get to a point where you've drawn so much that and you incorporate different things. Like I love this movie, I love this artist, or I love this brush, and then you do that over and over and over and over again until eventually you're like, all right, cool. The person I've drawn looks like the person I would draw. Like there's people I can even look at people's work now, and I'm like, oh, I know who that is, like straight away. Like Thomas Chamberlain Keane, like when I look at his stuff now, TCK, like every time he puts out a painting, or there's a painting that goes up on Facebook, and I'm scrolling, I'm like, okay, well, there's Thomas's new stuff. Like, people get to that point. Even the same with your stuff, like, you'll post like a study or something, like, oh, there's one of Erik's paintings, like it's you get to a point, and that's why people are like, how do you build style? And it's amalgamating everything that you've ever learned from everybody into one cohesive canvas, and then eventually the hundreds of things you've learned from different people eventually becomes it's like life in general. You have so many different life experiences from so many people, like the person who raised you, the person who was your first kiss, the person who was the good teacher when you were at high school. Like eventually 10-20 years later, when you come out the other end, you're a unique person because of all those things that were along the way. And it's the same with art.
Monumental in teaching you how to be.
Yeah, essentially, basically, yeah. So one of these things, but then again, it's the mileage. You've got to put it in. You can't develop an art style by sitting staring at your sketchbook. It's and we're all guilty of it, and especially me. Like it's you want to try and define your art style. You want to try and make headway into what you're doing, but you really just need to sit down and do the thing.
And it's a pain in the ass some days. Like I don't think there's any artist who doesn't have days where they're just like, I don't want to paint today.
Oh, dude, with the fucking world sometimes the way it's like, you just can't help but like be just bummed out by stuff. But it depends how you look at art. Sometimes I know people who use art basically to escape, just to really block out the world and get on with what they want to do.
I mean, there's also so much stuff that's like, for me personally, like I've been doing, you know, I can't just do one thing. Like there's some people that can sit and they can paint forever,
Right.
like
Yeah.
every day there's a new painting coming out, and it's the only thing they do is paint, which is, great if you can do that. I can't do that personally. Like
Mm-hmm.
because I want to do more. Like I want to do, I don't just want to do a painting. I want to make it come alive. I
Of
want to
course.
make a game, or I want to do a project, or and for me it's like half of the art that I do in my spare time is writing art direction documents. Like I've written now, I think, 3 big project documents
Right.
in the last few weeks, just because I was like, I have these ideas that I've had for a long time. It would be great to do something with it, but instead of thinking about it, I need to actually, decide what they're going to be. And so I sat down and I wrote a proper document, and
Mhm.
good practice as well, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, and I just, that's also like a type of art in a way. Like I look at that and I'm like, okay, this informs a lot on the color theory. And that's practice. It's a different type of practice. But
Mhm.
I mean, there's those kind of things you can do as well besides just painting. You can also, I don't know, say with 3D, for example, or
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that kind of predetermines people who usually tend to be art directors is that you can kind of turn your hand to anything.
mm,
Because then it means that when you're on a project like yours, like you said, if you need to go and speak to some of the art 2D art team, great, you've got that down. But then, like, cool, 3D needs a bit of a hand, right? Okay, well, I know roughly how we do. I've been in Maya and Blender enough that I know, I can talk to those people in their language. um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and or VFX needs something, right? Great, okay, animation needs something, and because you're a bit multifaceted about what you do, then sure, like it helps in that aspect that you can mold, and it's like being able to speak more than one language, right? Like you
Yeah,
get an advantage in a bar because you can talk to anybody.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and I love it personally. Like I love that I have an insight. Like one of the best things about my job is seeing what other people make during the day. It's like you get to see all these cool things being developed by the prop team, or the animation team, or the character team, and you can sort of be a part of a little bit of all of it. And that's a really cool feeling of like just seeing the whole game grow at the same time from different angles.
of
And
course.
yeah, I love that personally.
Yeah, I think it's one of these things where it depends where you want to go with your art. I think if you were going to be purely an illustrator and that's all you want to do with your life, then sure, you need to spend thousands of hours in your sketchbook or on Photoshop and just constantly training that muscle. But if you're looking to be involved in a team or make something like a game, then the more multi-diverse you are, the more ways you can turn your hand to different disciplines, then sure, that's going to be a more attractive thing to people who hire you than just being skilled in one thing.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I think the thing is that I always tell people is that no matter what you want to do in art, there's always going to be a job for you. You don't have to pander to people. You don't have to sacrifice things that you want just because you want to work in a team. People will always find a way to incorporate you if you're good enough. And yeah, I think it's one of these things as well where I learned early on that I went to a lot of these events in 2016 and watched people like Titus Lunner and a couple of different guys who at that time were trying to draw for
yeah,
Magic the Gathering and stuff, and you looked at their stuff and you were like, cool, so I need to make art like that. And so much of my earlier career was dictated by what I thought I should paint instead of what I wanted to paint, right?
yeah, yeah. No, I totally get that.
Yeah, it's very common. So probably a good place to stop. We've chatted for about an hour, but
Yeah,
and I've yet to see your results. For those guys who are watching the now edited episode, Erik's been painting in the background while I've been chatting to him. So the result will be on your screen now, but I've yet to see it. So I'm sure I'll be like, oh, that's amazing. So I'll just I'll just guess whatever you've drawn is really good. So
yeah.
um,
It's just a little character design. It's actually one of my IP things that I'm just fiddling around with some
nice.
thoughts and some ideas and seeing what I can do with this. We'll see how it turns out. I'm not
Yeah.
necessarily that happy with it, but it's a thing.
Well, of course. It's one of these things where it's your mind isn't completely on it anyway because you're obviously talking to me. So there'll be an element of what it would have looked like if you were just doing it without speaking. So yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah,
it's gonna be fun to see it in its fruition.
So well, thanks for coming on, Eric, and chatting
course.
away. It was really good to have you, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely fun to be here, and we've been talking about this for a long time, so it was good.
Fun to finally do it. Yeah, man, agreed. So if you haven't already, I'll leave links to Eric's work if you want to check it out, and all his socials will be below, so you can check his ArtStation and all his different things. And if you have any questions, pop them in the comments. You can always get in touch with them as well through ArtStation if you need to. And I'm sure he'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Yeah, totally. Also, with the podcast, thanks to you guys who have stuck about it this long to the end. Always appreciate you guys coming along to listen to another episode. If you have any suggestions for any future guests, or you want to talk to me about anything in particular about the Artcast, you can always check our Discord below and join if you want to check out some of the artists that are on there. And you can share your work, you can talk about art, anything else in between that comes up. And that's pretty much it for this episode. Again, check out the links below, join the Discord, give us a like and a comment, and make sure to share. And thanks again to you guys for listening. Thanks for coming on, and see you guys in the next episode.
Bye
Bye everybody.